Welcome back to the shop and to the channel. Well, in the last video on getting a DRO mounted to the K&T 2HL milling machine, I made this bracket that I'm going to use to mount the scale for the saddle travel. Well, I managed to get the bracket within 10 thousandths of parallel with the travel of the saddle. I'll work on making up that difference once I actually get the scale installed, because there might be some additional discrepancies there depending on how it mounts. Well, to get the scale mounted, I'm going to lightly clamp it here to the bracket and try to align it here horizontally by eye. But to get it a little bit more accurate here, we'll set a dial indicator again up here with a mag base and set it on to the top of the scale and try to get it aligned horizontally so it's in line with the travel of the saddle. Well, this doesn't really have to be exact within a thousandths. I think my tolerance here is probably plus or minus 250 thousandths. So I just want to make sure that my eyes aren't deceiving me and I've got this thing at least reasonably aligned horizontally. And I will say it's a good thing that there's a little bit of play in this mount where I've got some adjustability, at least up and down here, is because this thing moved slightly when I was using the transfer punch to mark the location of the holes that I want to drill and tap. I didn't really notice it until I looked at the video back, but I also noticed it when I went to mount this thing and realized how off kilter the screws were on each side. They weren't in the middle of that slot as I was expecting them to be. Either that or I marked the wrong hole, or the wrong punch mark, which I highly doubt, but it is possible. Now I'm going to go ahead and drill and tap these for a 1/4 screw, and I'll do that off camera. Well, I got those holes drilled and tapped and have the scale mounted in place. The next thing to do is to figure out how I'm going to get the reader head attached. Well, I already drilled and tapped a couple of holes in the side of the saddle for a bracket. And I had some leftover aluminum from the main bracket that I am attaching here on the end of the saddle. Now, the scale did come with some angle brackets that are to be used for mounting the reader head to various machines. And, mostly they're not completely useless, but they almost always require some level of modification. And this is going to be no different. I can mount the bracket to the reader head, but now I need to figure out how to mate up this angle bracket with that piece of aluminum that I have attached to the side of the saddle. The most important thing here to consider is some level of adjustability. Now, this bracket here on the bottom of it, as it attaches to the reader head, has some slots in it. So I have some adjustability in and out. So whatever I make to attach it to this vertical piece, I need to have some kind of up and down adjustability. So I have to make up that space between the angle bracket and the vertical bracket. And maybe some solid aluminum or something will work here. I need to make up about an inch or so, 3/4 of an inch or so, And I've got some flexibility. I can probably go down as low as 5/8 or so, but probably no more than an inch. So the slots in the angle bracket attached to the reader head give me that flexibility in and out. And a couple of slots here machined into this vertical piece of aluminum should give me the adjustability that I need for up and down. And while I'm at it, I'll probably clean up this bracket and delete all this extra junk off the side. Well, I have a few things I need to do, and in no particular order. I need to machine the slots here in the bottom of this bracket extension, whatever you want to call it, that attaches to the side of the saddle. I've got this block of aluminum that I pulled out of the scrap bin here that I'll use for the spacer between the extension bracket and the reader head bracket. I'll need to machine it to the right thickness, probably around 3/4 of an inch, and also to the width. I want it to match the 2 inches of the bracket. And I'll need to drill and tap a couple of holes here that will then line up with the slot in this bracket for the adjustable part of it. Now, as far as this stock piece of angle, I'm going to delete these slots off the side. They're ugly and they're not needed. I'm also going to figure out a way that I can pin this spacer to the angle. What I'll probably do is drill some countersunk holes here in the bracket and then tap some corresponding holes in the spacer, and that'll keep them pinned together once everything's machined to size. Well, I'll take these over to the Bridgeport and get this knocked out. I want to start by doing the machine work on the spacer. I want to get it good and square. I'm going to use a technique that I saw. I don't remember exactly where I saw it, but I know I saw it on YouTube somewhere, in which you square up 5 sides of your block. And I've got it mounted up higher in the vise, and what I'm going to do is mill the 4 sides in situation they are now, so they should all be square to the table, and then to also machine the top of the block so it becomes square to the 4 sides. With those four sides partially machined, one side completely machined, and then the top machined, those are all square to each other. I can now take this out of the vise. I'll give it a quick deburr and I'll flip it over. That way I can finish machining it square and also machine it to that 2-inch width. I'm also going to be machining this down to the correct thickness that will make up the space between the bracket hanging off the side of the saddle and that stock angle piece that attaches to the reader head. Well, I have the spacer now machined to size. It's the right thickness. It's the right width to hang on this bracket. I'm not quite done with it yet. I need to drill and tap 2 holes here that will align with the slots in the downward bracket. And I'm also going to drill and tap a couple of holes in it so I can pin it to the stock angle bracket. Well, whenever I'm drilling holes in material, I like to start with this 1/4 inch spotting drill. It has a 120-degree point on it, so it makes it a lot easier for the 118-degree drills to find the right center. So it's well worth using a spotting drill. If you're not using one, consider finding a nice short stubby spotting drill like this 1/4 inch. They're not very expensive, and it certainly will help with the accuracy of the holes that you're drilling. I have a number 25 drill, I believe this is, in the chuck, which is the drill tap size for a 1024 thread. I'll chamfer the hole with a countersink to make starting the tap just a little bit easier. Well, I like to use a spring-loaded tap follower whenever I'm tapping holes on the Bridgeport, and instead of mounting it in the chuck, which would mean I'd have to lower the knee because of the clearance issues I'd have, I mount my tap follower in a collet. This makes it a little bit easier. And having the power drawbar certainly makes changing out the drill chuck with a collet so much easier. I'm not sure I'd do this if I didn't have it. I really do think that the power drawbar is a game changer. I did a video series on how I made mine from a simple pneumatic tool. It was a really easy build, and it really does make using the Bridgeport so much more enjoyable. I will drill and tap the other hole here for this side, as well as the 2 holes that will be drilled and tapped on the opposite side. I'll do that off camera and bring you back when I'm done. To mount the spacer here to the stock angle bracket, I need to drill a couple of clearance holes for those number 10 screws. I want to machine away some of this unnecessary material off of the stock angle, and I think the best way to do it is to mount it in the vise so the part I am machining away is flat. I am spacing it up away from the vise jaws with a couple of parallels. Those won't be in the way, and it should be fairly straightforward as long as I don't bring the end mill down too far. I should be able to machine these away with little effort. The next thing I need to machine are the slots in the bracket that hangs off of the end of the saddle. I have a 1/4 inch end mill in the spindle, and I'm just locating where these slots are supposed to be with the DRO. Rather than plunging in and trying to mill this slot all at once, I find it's a little bit easier to basically drill a bunch of connecting holes along the length of the slot and then plunge in and finish machining out the remainder. I have all of the machine work now finished on these components. So I've got some 1024 screws here, and we'll do a little test fit and see how everything fits together. Well, everything seems to go together just as I had hoped, so take it over to the mill and get it mounted. I'll start mounting all of this by putting this vertical piece that's attached to the end of the saddle on first. I already have the spacer pinned to the stock angle, so I just need to mount it into the slots on this vertical component. Now I line up the reader head with the slots on the stock angle bracket. I want to make sure that these adjusting screws are actually a little bit loose, because as I tighten the screws up underneath to the reader head, I want all of that to be tight up against the scale. With all of these screws now good and tight where they're supposed to be, I can remove this red spacer. This spacer is designed to keep the reader head at the proper orientation to the scale. Once you get everything mounted to where it's supposed to be, you can pull that out, and now the reader head will slide free within the confines of the scale. Well, the next thing to do is go ahead and plug this into the Dr. DRO and see if it's working. Well, I've got it plugged into the DRO, and I have a dial indicator on the front of the knee, and I'm doing a little test here. I'm moving the dial until I read that it's traveled 1 inch, and looking at the DRO, it looks like it might be a thousandths and a couple of tenths off. That might be something in the scale where the scale needs to be adjusted a little bit yet. I haven't quite aligned it parallel. I still need to put that 10,000th shim in, so all of this might still need some adjustment. I'm not sure if this DRO has any kind of linear compensation in it. I might have to look into that. But overall, I think this is excellent. It certainly beats having to rely on the hand wheels, and I don't have to worry about dealing with backlash. So pretty happy with this so far. But yeah, it looks like it might be a thousandths off over an inch, which is actually quite significant. So I'm going to have to look into some additional adjustments. I also need to mount the scale covers here for both the table and the saddle feeds. I use oil as a lubricant for this machine, and I want to make sure that none of that gets up into the scale. So I'll need to drill and tap some holes to mount this, and then to put the end caps on. I likely put a little bit of RTV or silicone along that edge just to make sure that I don't get any fluids down in there. Well, this is pretty exciting. I've got 2 out of the 3 axes somewhat complete. Still need to do some adjustments, I think, and get those scale covers on. But we are really making a lot of progress, and I'm pretty excited to be where I am right now. Well, I still have to figure out exactly how I'm going to mount the scale for the knee axis, but I don't think that'll be too much trouble. It's going to be a little bit of work, but it should be pretty straightforward. But that's going to have to be in a different video. Well, if you like this one, give it a thumbs up. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. It really does help me try to make improvements to the videos. I really would like to thank those that are helping support the channel on PayPal and Patreon. I could not do this without your help. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.